Hey everyone, and welcome back to your Linux and open source news show. This week, we've got the release of Fedora 41 and the Cosmic Alpha 3. We've got the open source initiative finally defining what an open source AI model is, just as they define what an open source license is. And currently, no big name AI model is truly open source. And we also have Apex Legends and EA blocking all Linux gamers from playing the game, although they do have somewhat of a valid reason here. And instead of a sponsor segue, let me just tell you that if you like these news videos but you would like them to be in a daily format, you can get that from $1 per month. Just check out the link for Patreon or YouTube memberships. You'll get from Monday to Friday a 6 to 12 minutes long episode which recaps everything that happened the day before in pure audio format. You can listen to it as a podcast just like you probably do with this video, and of course you get plenty of other perks as well. All the links are in the description. Now let's get started. So there was some debate on what constitutes open source AI. The code to build the model might be open source, but if the training data is not, can you really say that an AI tool is really open? Some people thought that an open model without having open access to the data it used, it was like a binary where you couldn't retrain the model yourself to get the same results. Some people argued that only the code mattered. Well, we now have an official definition from the Open Source Initiative, which already defines what is an open source license. And yeah, you do need to clearly state where the training data for your model comes from if you want to call your model open source. You need to say how it was processed and how you can obtain that data or how you can license it. Basically, a model is only open source if it lets you understand how it is fully built. So you need to have access to all the components that were used in training the model. Of course, such a model also needs to give users all the usual freedoms, like using it for any purpose, redistributing it freely, and also letting people build things on top of that model. The goal, of course, isn't to go after companies and trying to sue them when they say that their model is open source but they don't actually conform to the definition. The goal is to have the community tell these companies, no, you're not open because you don't fit the definition. This is a tactic that works really well currently for open source licenses and open source code. Companies generally try to say that they are open, but they are quickly put in their place when weird licenses are found in their repos, and so there's no reason why it wouldn't work for AI either. It will, at the very least, stop companies trying to pass for something that they're not. Right now, for example, Meta says that their Llama model is open source, but according to this definition, it really isn't, because you don't know what it used to train that model. Google and Microsoft already agreed to drop the open source term from their models, but Meta apparently hasn't yet, so maybe this official definition will be the push that they need to either really be the first full big name open source model, or at least maybe they'll stop abusing the term. And I mean, it's easy to see why Meta wouldn't want this definition to be the one everyone agrees upon, because they just do not want to let people know where the training data comes from. Because, surprise, surprise, none of these models sourced that data ethically. They just grabbed everything that was publicly available and assumed it also meant it was free to use for any case and any purpose, which obviously is not the case. Disclosing where the data comes from would be a major endeavor and would reveal that basically they stole everything and they would get tons of lawsuits. So no company wants this definition to be the right one. But it has to be, because you cannot say something is fully open if it's been trained like a black box and you don't know the provenance and you can't recreate the results. So this definition is definitely the right one in my opinion, but of course companies will fight it or will just accept that they're not open source and they won't stop masquerading as being community friendly when they really aren't. And still on the topic of AI, Torvalds is at it again, this time dropping what I'll call a truth bomb about AI, stating that it's currently 90% marketing and 10% reality. At the Open Source Summit in Vienna, he basically tried to see the potential in AI, but he says that all the marketing hype is muddying the waters and it makes him want to avoid the AI space altogether. He did say that AI is likely going to change the world at some point, but that for now he's ignoring it, notably because he thinks that the entire tech industry around AI is in a very bad position, although he didn't really clarify what he meant by this. Is it copyright problems or just the usual PR marketing BS that we see around what AI is capable of doing versus what it really is capable of doing, which isn't much. Torvalds also stated that in about 5 years, maybe things will change. We will see AI being actually used in real-life workloads. He said that ChatGPT makes some great demos currently, and that it's being used in many areas, but he also says that he really hates the hype cycle around it. And that's fair. My experience with AI tools to try and create PowerPoint presentations to teach some lessons to kids, it just rewrites all my already written text into some garbled nonsense that misses all notions of concept. ChatGPT never exactly understands what I want it to do and always does a half-assed job. And you can always tell what has been written by AI and what hasn't. You also have the current example of patient transcripts in hospitals being rewritten from audio interviews through AI and inventing a lot of stuff that was never said in the conversation. These tools are just not currently ready, and misrepresenting them in PR and marketing is really not helping people trust them, I think. Now, on the Linux releases side, we had 2 distributions released this week. First, there was Fedora 41. It will probably appeal to a lot of people. It comes with GNOME 47 and all of its nice features. I already covered all of those in a lot of detail in previous episodes or in a dedicated video on my YouTube channel. Go check that out if you want more. Notably, the main ones were accent colors by default, better performance and a better compositor, better Wayland support, some application upgrades, improvements to the file manager called Nautilus, and a much better file open and save dialog because it is now powered by the same file manager. Fedora 41 itself also comes with DNF5. Finally, that's the latest version of the package manager that they ship, and it brings much faster downloads and it's less reliant on other dependencies. It can work on all different device types without needing additional components. KDE users will get KDE 6.2 on Fedora 41. They also now enabled secure boot, even on systems that use the NVIDIA drivers, which had been disabled previously, and they now ship Firefox with Pipewire enabled by default, meaning it is able to better take advantage of the improved webcam support that Fedora 41 brings. It's a solid release here. I know a lot of people disagree, but I've always found DNF far inferior to apt. It's just slower, even with the right mirrors. It fails to install certain stuff, and it's really bad at auto-completing what I need. I really prefer apt. A lot of people might disagree, but DNF5 seems to fix most of those issues, which is nice. Fedora 41 is really cool. I gave it a shot on the Framework laptop that I do have right there. I made a video about this one very recently, and I really enjoyed the smooth GNOME experience. Now, the other distro release that happened this week is a good one for me personally, because it's Tuxedo OS 4. This is the OS that the Tuxedo laptop manufacturer or reseller ships by default, and it's the distro I use as my daily driver to edit this podcast, all these videos, and all that stuff. So Tuxedo OS 4 is now rebased on Ubuntu 24.04 instead of 22.04, meaning I will finally be able to get packages that aren't 2.5 years old. Now, it still doesn't come with Plasma 6.2 yet, it's still 6.1. It's not a big deal. They tend to update Plasma as a rolling version anyway, sort of a hybrid release mode, which works well. This is also apparently the last version that will use a numbering scheme specifically. Tuxedo said that the OS receives daily updates to Tuxedo-specific patches for your computer, but also UEFI, all the Ubuntu security patches that all Ubuntu users receive usually, and they also update Plasma as a rolling release. So Tuxedo says it doesn't really make sense to have version numbers, and thus they won't use them anymore in the future. Now, I didn't get the update just yet. Apparently, all you have to do is apply all your updates and reboot. I haven't received the update yet. They built a graphical tool to let you know what's happening and if something works well or fails to update. So I'll update you, maybe if you're interested, as the update process goes on. Tuxedo OS has been For me, very, very solid. I know some people will suspect that it's because they're a usual sponsor of the channel that I'm saying this, but honestly, I wouldn't stick to it if it sucked, and it really doesn't. It's been the most solid Linux experience I ever had, and I'm gonna keep using it, even though the LTS base is not necessarily what I would prefer. Now this week we have another loss for Linux gaming, because EA announced that they would block Linux and the Steam Deck from playing Apex Legends, effective immediately. Before everyone starts bashing on EA, because, well, they usually really deserve it, to be honest, they gave a detailed explanation. The anti-cheat did not run at the kernel level on Linux because, well, the game runs with Proton, Proton is Wine, Wine runs at the user level, not the kernel level. So you had an inferior version, a less secure version of the anti-cheat tool on Linux. And it looks like some cheaters either decided to use Linux to play the game and cheat, or they made their Windows look like it was a Steam Deck or a Linux system to the game. So the anti-cheat would say that it's okay to run at the user level, but then those cheaters would run kernel level cheats. This apparently disproportionately affected games of Apex Legends, where most cheaters came from Linux or came from a system masquerading as being Linux. Now, since EA cannot differentiate between these, they didn't have a choice and they blocked everyone using Linux or spoofing their system to look like it was Linux-based. This is the third time a big developer makes the same move. Roblox was first for the exact same reasons of cheating, enabled by leaving a door semi-open for Linux users. Then it was GTA 5, even though they didn't confirm if the reasons were the same, but that's very likely. And now we have Respawn and EA doing this as well. And Valve really needs to address this. Valve or anyone else, but this situation needs to be fixed. Whether it's a Steam Linux kernel module that can also implement anti-cheat stuff running at the kernel level, or maybe it's a Linux version of the kernel level thing that can talk to the user level thing running with Proton. I don't know, but there needs to be a development somewhere that manages to fix this gap. I know a lot of people will say, well, I don't care, I won't play these games if they don't support my OS, and that's fine. But for the general public, it just makes Linux and the Steam Deck look like they're really not viable for a lot of games. It really makes our platform look underwhelming compared to Windows, and it's also starting to build a reputation for Linux as being an OS for people who want to cheat, which is really not the image you want associated with your system if you want to grow in the general market. Now, we also have some news from CoreBoot after the unhinged person leading Malibal called the entire ecosystem around it a scam. The CoreBoot project issued a rebuttal. They basically said that Malibal never entered into any contract with any company that they contacted, and that Malibal misrepresented the situation by saying their code was 80% done when it really wasn't. They also said that no consultant failed to deliver any work because they were never contracted. Malibal terminated the relationship, or the consultants did, at the evaluation stage. They also said that the hardware that Malibal provided had problems, which made it really hard to also actually evaluate or to get started on the work. 9 Elements, one of the consultants that Malibal contacted, also had a very diplomatic blog post stating that they didn't even charge for any of the work that they did, even though they had started working in good faith without a contract, because Malibal just was not constructive, they had unrealistic expectations when it came to their code and how fast it would be complete, which is why they dropped them. So yeah, on the one hand, you've got one manufacturer that says they had a really bad experience and they think they were scammed, and on the other hand, you've got other companies that have no issues working with CoreBoot, like System76 and their principal engineers saying that Malibal has a skill issue, and you've got the entire CoreBoot project and some consultants saying, hey, this guy really misrepresenting this whole thing, and it's basically on them. So I let you decide who you want to trust, but my mind was made up in the last video and it's still made up now. Now this week, System76 quietly released the Cosmic Desktop Alpha 3. I did not get a press release this time or an ISO to test it in advance or a list of the new features, so I guess they're now moving to just updating things more quietly, and maybe they will give people a heads up again with the beta or the final release. Anyway, this version is mysterious. They don't have a list of new things this time around. The only thing I could glean is the screen reader now having a first implementation on Wayland, although it's apparently in a very early state and it only works with a patched library. They're providing this as a proof of concept for other distros if they want to try implementing it. The to-do list that they still have to do seems unchanged. A lot of settings pages still need work. The compositor needs variable refresh rate, HDR and nightlight support, and most accessibility features and animations are yet to come too. So it looks like this Alpha 3 is mainly bug fixes and a proof of concept for accessibility under Wayland, or at least the screen reader under Wayland, which obviously did not really warrant a new press release and reviewers looking at it again. I personally think I will only cover Cosmic again when they reach the beta stage or the final release stage, and I also personally doubt that they'll be able to release a final version before the end of the year now. They're on Alpha 3, they only have 2 months to go from Alpha 3 to final release. I doubt that this is possible now. I think we'll see the final version of Cosmic in early 2025 instead. Now, KDE started their usual end-of-year fundraiser, this time themed around Halloween and spooky, scary proprietary software. As usual, KDE asks users and interested parties to donate at the end of each year to get them a solid budget that they can work with. Like they say, they're operating at a loss, and they've been for 1 or 2 years, because they need to spend a large one-time donation that they received a while back. That's if they want to remain a non-profit. They cannot have big reserves of cash. They need to spend it to, well, run the non-profit. And they also say that at some point, their current level of spending will need to be reduced because, well, they will have spent all of that reserve. So they're asking users to donate because that's a much more reliable and recurring source of revenue, although you can always just donate one time if you prefer. KDE says that the current economic situation isn't favorable for nonprofits, as we've seen with GNOME, who had trouble raising funding, not specifically from users, but from entities, which is where these companies really want to fund themselves. And they said that they would like to avoid having to cut back like the GNOME Foundation did. So of course, if you use KDE and you like it, don't hesitate to part with a little bit of cash. Now, since I now use KDE as my daily desktop and I realized I was donating to some projects that I use far less than my own desktop, I decided to start giving them a little bit of money each month. If you're able to do so and you like KDE, it's not a bad thing to do either. I do hope that GNOME and KDE both can manage to get reliable funding sources so they can keep hiring developers and they can keep the Linux desktop growing at the fast pace that it's been moving for the past few years, because this is a really cool space to be in. This is moving super fast, but it's still a lot of volunteer unpaid work, and it would probably be way more reliable if they managed to have more funding to handle all of this. Okay, and now we can't conclude this video without this segue to our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. They make laptops and desktops and just computers in general that run with Linux pre-installed. You have a choice of popular distros, but you can also just slap whichever distro you like. They have repos that you can add to add specific patches and fixes if they are needed for specific hardware. They have a wide range of computers from ultrabooks, towers, gaming-focused stuff, ultralights, or bigger, more well-cooled computers. You decide. I do all my work and all my gaming from Tuxedo Computers these days. All my videos, all my podcasts, everything is handled on one of their laptops, and all my gaming is done on one of their desktops. So if you need a new computer, you want to run Linux on it, and you want to support a company that actively contributes to Linux's development because most of their patches end up being upstreamed to help supporting most devices, well, you know what to do. There's a link to Tuxedo Computers in the description of the video. Go check them out, they're really good. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, all the YouTube pleasantries are in their usual spot. Click all the buttons, leave a comment, you know how things work. And if you really enjoy the channel, there are plenty of links in the description to support it. Thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!